YouTube channel, What Now? I'm your host, Anika Malik, joining you from London. With me, I have John Hilbrey joining us from Sisimbra as my co-host today, and our very special brother, friend, almost our son-like friend. Billy and I met in Johannesburg at a workshop that we were conducting there. And he just took my breath away, if I may say here and admit and confess. So Billy is a musician, poet, performer, artist, and visionary, and everything. So without further ado, I will invite John and Billy as well. And the topic we would be discussing, or just maybe expanding on, is something we discussed in a mutual dialogue we were having, where Billy said something which is every night I think about it, because we were discussing from what now, that was the COVID lockdown period, to what next, is this post-COVID world where everybody is worried about their economic, situation, and more so about artists and how are they now with this social distancing. How is the artist, the performer, is feeling, and how are they, communicating with people now virtually? And Billy said something about this, this energy and how virtually we can connect to each other, which was very interesting. And Billy is going to expand on that. And that's a topic very close to John's heart as well. So I'm going to bring in John here before we bring in Billy. Over to you, John.
Really, the audience, the live participation, and the performer are key to this mysterious world in which the individual connects to the multitude, and the multitude is informed, advised, and transformed by the presence of the individual on the stage. But in the same way, depending upon the capacity and the emotion of the audience, the individual who's presenting is transformed too. And as you well know, there are audiences and audiences. The interconnection between the performer and the observer is a remarkable thing. And this is, in fact, true of Einstein mathematics and quantum theory too. But you and I, which were not, presumably, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a scientist, but I know about all that goes on within that zone. And so do you, by Billy, I know you do. So I know how much you know. It's amazing. So the magic of all this, I think, and I'd like you to tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm willing to learn. How important is that atmosphere created by the majority? And how important is the tone of voice that you had that day, as opposed to a tone of voice you have another day?
Sure.
Because the key of your expression may change from major to minor, or minor to major, and you see a transformation in the audience because it's
plus
in a different
plus the physical to virtual now.
Exactly. So there are, we know, we people who live in the world that you and I live in, and Nika lives in, we know there are other dimensions already. There are many more to be. If there's one, there are many, and clearly there are many to those who study nature and who emerge ourselves with nature. Give me your thoughts on those few words, please, if they give you any inspiration whatsoever.
I mean, he explained in so many words, and he's asking you to give you a few words.
No, as many words.
Well, in tapping into almost the other, but not necessarily the other, because it's, parallel. It's here with us. It's constantly here. And of course, what you're saying there, John, about the key and the tonality that changes per day, and changes the feelings and the message that is being transported, is we of course miss it so much because we rely on the moment, and the moment is what's cherished even more than the content. So the time that we have now in exchanging this is what's more important than what's being said. So most of the information is carried inside of the time spent. And of course, when I'm to say the same information again at a different time, the information is somewhat changed because it's in another space and time, and the delivery holds differently. And to just be cognizant of that as well, to see how we can somewhat manipulate time and intention in what we are trying to communicate, that we are then able to manipulate the time, because then the information or the data that is being transferred is reliant on the intention, more than the space and the time. So
this is very deep, Billy. This is very deep. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, so now more so than ever in the virtual space and the actual space, it's now when we need to really activate that space of being able to know what we're doing with the time that we have. One person was saying, now is the time to only share things that are meaningful, because we don't have time to waste anymore, because everything is so limited. It's only the meaningful things that can be transferred. Same as space as well, because we're having to pay for so much space in the data world or the cyber world, that you're buying gigs and megabytes, and those are in a certain limited time, and they are monetary. So with the amount with the amount of minutes that you have, you only have this much information to transfer in this much time.
So can I ask you a question now in this context? So you said something about teleporting, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about thoughts and imaginations. Yes, when you are performing a live performance on the stage and theater, then you are sort of taking your audience and with you through your imagination, through your delivery of words, or you create this world for them, and they can imagine. So now you are in a virtual space, right? And we are just seeing each other through. There's no, say, alchemy. Yes, maybe virtual alchemy is there, but so how are you then? Do you think that now thoughts are transferred through these bytes and gigabytes and whatever? I mean, that's such an interesting thing that I keep on thinking as well. So how are we now with each other? We are in each other's space, and I don't know. What do you feel about this?
I think, and also because now more than ever, we're being given the space or the time to think about one another. Because in the normal world that we've been before, prior or pre-COVID, we didn't have enough time to spend on thinking about others. And in this time, we're kind of forced to imagine, and I think
this perceived social distancing,
yes,
especially that, which bugs me.
That perceived kind of forces us into a space of imagination. We are having to imagine. I'm having to imagine Anika in London and imagine how she is, because I can't get on a flight and go there and see how she is. And I think in that space of imagination is where the thoughts are then transferred. That I'm thinking about you, John. And you catch it in the air. Somewhat, because the concentration is so much on that information. So, and it's the only thing that I can really, really, really rely on because a Zoom and a phone call will give us a certain hour. In a particular hour, will I then only be able to communicate this. But before this moment, when we were in the call, one had to think and send all those vibrations or thoughts, you know, to kind of really tap into that space of telepathic communication. And now it's getting much more concentrated. And I think it's very, very important that when we enter that space, it's important that we open up ourselves enough to also look after it, because it's so dangerous, right? So to manage what's being communicated in those spaces, also how we receive that information and what do we do with it in that space.
Can you expand on what do you mean by dangerous?
I mean, I always think that because it's information, it's like a virus. it's like a virus on a stick, on a memory stick, right? If it enters a laptop and it has a virus, it might really disrupt the entire system of the laptop or the PC. So
much already a lot of abuse, you know, on virtual abuse going on.
Sure, yeah.
Great.
And the least we can do is to really give the good from ourselves, actively so. Yeah.
John?
Oh, Billy. What is the message you're trying to deliver in your life, Billy?
I guess what I'm trying to communicate fully is for us as a human being or people to step into our purposes, or to remember what we said we wanted to do, you know. And I think that is really the thing that I'm trying to communicate. Also trying to step inside of my purpose fully, and communicate that without flinching, you know.
Very good.
Yeah. So
and what, Billy, I'm sorry to ask you, so what is the purpose?
That's so.
I'm sorry.
No,
in a cute way, he's asking, like it's a very easy question.
I think my purpose is really to communicate the things that we all know but have forgotten. Because I somewhat think that there's amnesia that happens when we're born, right? Memory loss from all that we know prior counting or time. And my deepest feeling is that I'm here to ignite that again, you know, so that we can serve and return having done the job.
Serve people or the divine purpose? What? Serve who? Both?
I think essentially, yeah. Essentially, human being is the extension of the divine.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
This is perfect. I think maybe what is happening, maybe it's happened many times before, but this period we're going through is very reflective, as you said earlier. We're all going on a journey and we're thinking. But maybe we're thinking or feeling that our capacity is untapped. And what you just referred to was the innocence of the origin of your person and your being, you, Billy. And I, John and Anika, we're born in innocence and purity. And we're born perfect. And we get corrupted by the world. And you were talking about speed, and the speed of change is such that the corruption element, which you said can get trapped into the system and absorb and corrupt the youth and the future. What we're now on is a form of great corruption. There's a real fear that much of what we are exposed to through this medium is a corruptive force. And it is retention of the innocence and the purity of our origin, which is what we have to tap into, I think, and then express. And I think that's what I understood you just said. Do good, you said. It's very simple, really. Good means God. Be more godlike. And to claim to be more godlike is a terribly presumptive statement for anybody. But that's what we have to try to do, be more like a godlike character and personality, and do no harm. And I suspect this is the purpose.
Okay, so I'm going to share something with you as well, John, which I sent to Billy. And I would like him to expand on this because we are in this moment in time where all of us require a lot of, the world needs healing. You know, we need to heal ourselves, we need to heal, you know, the virus and, you know, everything. It's like physically heal, spiritually heal. So I was reading, I read this on Facebook. One of my very dear Sufi friends, she posted this. And I shared with Billy, it's a quote which says, "It is no doubt a wonderful thing to have heard the secret harmonies, the music of the spheres, or songs of the angels. But what we want, those of us who are still chained by the ears to the earth, is to hear those musics ourselves as best as we can. And for this purpose, we need not mystics or theorists, but composers and performers." So I believe this, in this age, this time, it's the performers, it's the, you know, people like Billy, the, you know, the musicians, they can bring healing. And, you know, just the having the presence of a healer is very healing itself. Even if you don't speak, even if you don't say anything, just the presence of that healer is enough. So what, Billy, over to you. How are you going to heal us or the world with your poetry?
I think this is really the time to reconcentrate the words, you know, and the music. I think the vibrations of sound, to refocus them again, you know, for that composition to be rearranged, for the healer's work to really just avail itself. Now more than ever, really, I think those voices are the most crucial. And more than ever, it's for those voices to kind of correlate with the theorists and the scientists, right? So that this well of knowledge can be even expanded to almost a point of tangibility, right? Where we can almost touch it, because we know that the scientist operates in factual state, or in the things that he can touch, and the performer kind of operates to a place of even wavelength, you know, things that you can't really see but can only to some extent believe in. And I think those two are meant to coexist, so that the actuality of whatever is being communicated can really come to fruition, you know. And now the writers of music, I think mostly the music people, really, more than anyone else, music could really just be the answer. Could really just shift the world, because it has even also managed to shift the world the opposite way that we don't want it, you know. And I think in that gap, really the composer or the musician can go to the music, and really request a stream of communication, to rebuild and reorganize the world, you know. Because to some extent, I always imagine that the world or the universe in its vastness, it has a continuous wave of sound, that is constant. It's constantly there. It's constantly buzzing. And I think from that quote that you just said there, Annika, of saying it's time for those that have constantly availed their ears to this music to really recommunicate it to those who probably can't hear it. And I think the healer's presence is to take what's there in the air that people can't normally hear and make it accessible, you know. And I think that's it's the time for the artist or for the creator or the creative to recreate for the ears of those who are created, you know, so that harmony can find its way back to its original position, you know, because I think also in the way that people live, there's a sense of harmony that can be retained, you know, and also maybe probably in us getting back to a point of static nature, what becomes much more kinetic is really our thoughts, the music that's in the air, everything else that can stabilize the universe again in its constant movement, you know. And that can just make us revisit the divine again, you know, and start seeing the beauty again, you know, because I think those tiny little things are the things that we have sort of forgotten. It's the amnesia that one was talking about, that we've forgotten the essence of beauty. And this is the moment to revisit it again in the presence of the ugly, or what kind of holds us back from just moving around, can somewhat remind us of what is beautiful or what beauty means, essentially. And I think it's really regrouping and returning back to almost that source again and hearing again, you know.
But so in the face of all this chaos around you, say for example, you know, and I know for a fact that performers and people who are in this creative sphere, they sort of absorb all that negativity, and you know, they get affected the most because they're sensitive souls. That's why they are into this, you know, creating things, right?
So
what do you do? How do you then talk about beauty and harmony, and you know, how do you survive it all? That would be interesting to know.
Sure. You know,
Laughing.
I also laugh because it's such a complex thing to negotiate, right? That what's availed to your immediate eye is ugly, and what you're having to extend or to see far beyond the wall is beautiful, and to want to almost diminish the wall's substance, you know, and kind of cross it with your spirit, and go see what's on the other side, and speak of that more than the wall. It's such a difficult thing to constantly negotiate. And what's difficult is also the ability to know that there is that beauty that is on the other side, and to speak of it, because it sounds like you're hopeful. And
beautiful.
And yeah, and the other thing that I've come to now is that hope goes to an extent, and being faithful is actually much more active, right?
Definitely.
And in the words of hope that you speak, there must be an activity that is coupled with them. That even when you speak of beauty, you must almost live beautifully or speak beautifully, so that those words become, and really there's transformation from you uttering them. And I think the reason why the poet is important now,
yes,
is to utter those words with the utmost belief, and so that they can transform the listener or the audience, and that constant conversation between the two of them. Because I think now what's happening for the performer is that we can't really sense where the listener is sitting, and And I think that is the most
Mm.
difficult conversation. We're trying to understand where is the audience seated. Where are they emotionally? Where are they spiritually? And how do you communicate that? And how do you make them calm at the same time? How do you transform that space? Because it's easy for us to transform it when we're in one room. I can step onto space and rearrange the aura of the room just by my body being there. But now, because we are so distant apart, we're having to really negotiate that on who's listening, how do I tap into that space? Yeah.
So why?
Yes, yes, and yes. The word, the sound, the note, the key, the vibration. We live in a world of verbal cacophony. I call it the new Tower of Babel, where we're all speaking and no one's hearing and no one's understanding. No one's listening.
Yeah.
But you were just speaking and I was hearing and I was understanding and I was listening and so was Anika. So your capacity, really, is very unusual. And you've got to keep speaking. Maybe very tiring for you. And it will become very tiring for you. But you've got to keep speaking. Because it is that moment when we realize, which is now the use of the language, the precision of the use of the language, and the tone of the language, the music of the language, the music of the spheres, if you want to put it up there. In the beginning was the word. We have heard this many times. The logos. Was the logos a sign or was it a word? Or was it a sound? Well, yes, all of that. And so in the great music and the great poetry and the great art, we hear the origin of beauty itself and of harmony and balance. And you've reconnected all of these things for me in what you've just said. So
Yeah.
thank you, indeed. Thank you.
Beautiful. So you have your own enterprise, a theatre duo. Tell us, what are you doing with it nowadays? I mean, are you as a team working virtually together, or what's happening there?
Yeah, so it's the two of us, myself, Matlati Mkhonyana, who's my business partner. It's been very interesting to exist in this time. So, of course, our meetings are now virtually. But also, we try as much as we can to just be in a physical space as well, to kind of understand our anxieties as well. And I think, because sometimes through the lens you can't really tell where the other one is until you're in the same room and you can feel
The body language as well.
yeah, the levels of that anxiety and what this has done, but also with the opportunities that it presents, in being called to do certain works in certain places that you hadn't imagined that you could, because of the continuous presence on either the social media world or the internet, and now we're having to learn to be present in this sphere, but also physically work, that the people haven't forgotten your physical body, or your physical capabilities.
Isn't this more draining now? Because, when you're physically performing, you can stop after your performance, right? Now, digitally, it's like constant, non-stop, day and night. You have to be present, be present. So is it draining for you?
It's a lot.
Well, he doesn't get the energy back. You don't get the energy back from the audience because you're giving, but you're being actually infused with new energy by the people around you. And that's not, you're not being given anything back. One is not being anything back. And so you're giving, but you're not receiving. It's very difficult and very tiring.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot because you don't know. And the only thing that you can hold on to is what you're intending to do. That's the only thing you're holding on to, because you're not sure if what you're communicating goes across, if it lands the way that you want it to, and you can only rely on your intention, and believe that the intention is really what will do its work after you've said the things, you know. So of course, that constant questioning of saying, yo, did that work? Does it work? I have to try and do it again, because I'm not sure if it's really working, you know. And you constantly almost try to perfect yourself in another space, you know, to see yourself fully existing there and being certain, you know, that what you're saying goes across and there's no question about it.
Well, as far as we're concerned, you are succeeding.
Yes, your positivity. Yes.
Without any doubt whatsoever. It's working.
Thank you. Thank you for that reaffirmation. You know, it's
working.
Sometimes, it's so good to hear that as well. You know, because I think it kind of does the push. It says, no, do continue, because that is the path, and you need to sit on it. So that has been the dialogue with us as the theatre duo, and also finding other interests. I think that this is the other opportunities that this space is kind of given, that you're figuring out other interests or things that really spark interests in your brain, and you're going, yo, this is quite exciting, but it's not my field, but yet I'm so interested in it. And that curiosity is kind of serves the knowledge that that company then has, you know, and can then create from. So I think what this has also given us is that space of learning anew, you know, and go collect other information so that we can extend the theatre company moving forward.
And it would be really interesting to know how do you ground and refuel yourself, because you know, I can imagine there's too much fatigue as well, this digital drainage as we spoke about.
Sure.
So how do you ground and refuel, and then imagine, you know, how do you write your poetry? What works with you then?
Yeah. So the other day, I was sitting there and I knew that if I'm trying to write creatively, I'm gonna fail. And then what I started doing was speaking or writing directly to the things that move me, you know, and with my curiosity towards that, you know. And I find that always sparks something exciting when I come back to the work, you know. I go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that could sound like that, or that is what I would say towards that. And I find that it's because I'm honestly relating to it, without trying to do my work, or like do an occupation, you know. And that kind of always brings me back to the essence of constantly doing what I have to do, and creatively so, but without trying. If I'm writing, the motion is what I need to get used to so that I do not tire. I need to connect my head and my hand, and my heart, so that when I do this, it's not work.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is what
it then
you
becomes
know,
part of.
John also says to me, you don't stop. And you know, sometimes it's difficult to tell people when the work you do becomes your passion. You know, you're passionate about it. When your passion is burning you, it's like the fire, which is, you know, energy. So I think it's really, really profound. But before we go away, how about you maybe share with us, how are you feeling nowadays? If something you've written very recently, which in corresponding to our current scenarios and situations around the world, or how you feel wherever you are.
Yeah, I think my feelings now is I'm sort of seeing the or the world conspiring, right? And I'm in it, and it's reconfiguring itself, and I'm becoming very peaceful with that idea, you know, that there's a reconfiguration that's happening, and I am part of it, and my hand on it is to fully and honestly exist in it with no complaint. I'm getting almost comfortable to that idea, you know, and it's helping me also with sanity, to be sane, you know, and stay present to my immediate family, to friends around, you know, and not be stuck in a bubble of existentialism, but really speak to existentialism in the immediacy, you know, that it's here, I'm here with my family, and this is what's happening. And what does this mean on a bigger scheme of things? And how do I react or respond to this? And the works that lately I've been sketching, which is not my field. And it's been interesting to see that and what that does to my writing. So the correlations of those art mediums, that the sketching, for the fact that I want to sketch, and I do sketch, the sketching wants me to write. You know, when I look at the sketch, I want to write to it. You know, I want to respond to it, and these are becoming kind of different modes of constantly keeping inspired and responding to the world. And writing, and my other curiosity now is wanting to write letters, you know.
A letter, please.
Yes, I will send letters, you know. I'm so interested in that the root word that is tele, you know, telephone, yeah, telephone, and all of that, you know. That's communication state that is tele, you know. So I'm very, 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 very curious on where it actually, even like the root of it, when it sparked. When was it that the world decided that there will be telecommunication in the world, that we'll do this, that this is how we will communicate? So I'm very, very curious in returning to almost the source of where we are now, you know, to see how, because I'm sure in them creating these formats of communicating, there was some excitement in discovery. And that's where I want to sit in. I want to sit in those bubbles of excitement when they discover. And I mean, for me, returning backwards will be me discovering what they have discovered already, but also getting a fuller understanding of where we are currently and a possible spark of where we're going with the progression and the evolution of ways of communicating.
It's always a spiral, you know.
Yeah.
It spirals up and down, goes up and then down. So
The DNA. Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And I really love this conversation. Thank you so much. You summarized so much of what I think we're all feeling. It's a curious time. It's a new time. It's a time we have to move into and accept and reshape in the space that we've been given. And we have a new space, or we will have a new space. It may not have arrived quite yet, but the new space is coming. And we will see who fills that space. Let's hope it's a good space, a beautiful space, a consoling space, and a space that brings harmony to the world. Let's hope for that.
Thank you.
Bring it on as a poet.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for the space as well, and for the conversation to happen. It's so helpful as well for my quest, you know, to know that it's important to jump on it and inquire up until we find Yeah, and I'm really, really, really appreciative of this room, and for your amount and wealth of wisdom. I'm really, really, really appreciative of to have such figures that one can bounce off. They are crazy little thinkings, and they can restructure them to potency and importance. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy for sure, but creative as well. Because what we have taken away, I think all this freedom of speech, has actually taken away the creative expression. It has become more so about being politically correct. So I don't believe in this freedom of speech that it exists anymore. But I think if we start, this creative expressions we have stopped exchanging these things, the profoundness of conversation or communication. It's all very superficial nowadays, right? And it's all about saying more and listening less, what the other person is saying. So thank you for this exchange. I'm really humbled. And in John's presence, of course, who's the guru of all this, I must say.
I'm not sure about that.